evening and welcome to our Facebook Live event on the nighttime economy, or essentially on nights out. I'm really sorry if you've been trying to join us before now. We are having the usual technical difficulties with, I think, probably a combination of weather and Wi-Fi and all of the usual things. But I'm Kim McGuinness, I'm the Police and Crime Commissioner for Northumbria. I'm joined by Barry Joyce, who is the Chief Superintendent for Northumbria Police and is the Area Commander for Southern, which to us is Sunderland and South Tyneside. And we are at Victoria's Loft in Sunderland. The purpose of this evening is basically to answer your questions. We're coming into the busy festive period. As everyone's aware, it's now dark nights. It's rainy nights tonight, but it's dark nights. And one of the things that we hear from people is, despite the fact that everyone has a right to feel safe and has a right to have fun without fear on a night out, sometimes people don't always feel as safe as they should. So what we're going to do this evening, we're going to be with you for about 40 minutes. We're going to talk a little bit about everything that's already going on to try and keep people safe and to make our nighttime economy really a safe place to be. And we're going to take as many of your questions as possible. So please do pop your questions in the chat. We will try to get through as many as possible. We have had some questions submitted in advance, which is really good, so we'll cover those as well. But first of all, Barry, I don't know if you want to give us a little bit of a picture about what Northumbria Police will be doing over the coming months, and actually, you know, all the time, because this is always a focus, to reduce vulnerability, to make people feel safe, and to make sure that incidents are reduced on nights out.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're really fortunate right across the Northumbria area. We've got a really vibrant nighttime economy. We know that people travel far and wide to come and sample our nights out and our economy. As you rightly point out, we are going into a festive period, but we've also got the World Cup coming up, so we know that there's going to be an influx of absolutely, it is coming home, just for clarity. But it is going to be a really busy period, as December always is. And I think probably it's worth pointing out twofold. So we have an overt policing presence within the nighttime economy, and I think that's what the public will see.
So that's police out in uniforms where you can see them.
So high visibility in key locations, high footfall, to provide that kind of reassurance, to identify vulnerability, and make sure that people are safe on a night out ultimately, and take enforcement action where we need to. But that's only one side of what we're doing in terms of the nighttime economy. What the public probably don't see is what we call Operation Cloak, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through the interview. But in essence, that gives us the ability to have plainclothes officers within the nighttime economy as well. That's the bit that the public won't see. And again, they become really effective tools in terms of identifying vulnerable people and people who we suspect are acting in a suspicious manner and potentially pose a risk to the public. So it's twofold, it's overt and that plainclothes element.
Yeah, which I think a lot of people will find reassuring. Don't worry about it, it's definitely not an interview, just a conversation. It's you who does the interviews. But you know, as you said, there'll be kind of that visible policing presence, and obviously we're in Sunderland tonight, aren't we? But this is right across the force area, not just in our major city and town centres.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Localised police activity as well. It's really important to keep everybody safe right across the Northumbria area. Clearly in the city centres we have that higher visibility and that higher presence because we have higher footfall numbers, but absolutely this is right across the force.
And you mentioned the World Cup there, which is, you know, an additional thing that we're all thinking about. Obviously we're all hoping and rooting for England, but it does bring with it additional pressure, doesn't it?
No, absolutely, and we want people to enjoy the World Cup. We want people to come in and celebrate and watch the matches. All we ask is that you do that in a responsible way, that you do it in a respectful way of other people, and we're here to facilitate that and hopefully keep everybody safe and let everybody enjoy the football.
Excellent. You obviously mentioned some of the things that police are doing, but one of the things that we've really focused on through the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner is this theme of feeling safe in public areas, including on our nights out. And so just a bit of an update from me. People may have seen our Fun Without Fear campaign, which is all about addressing sexual harassment on nights out and trying to make it really clear that that will be taken really seriously. We do have those increased policing presence both through the undercover work with Operation Cloak, but a widened presence there. But I think as well, for people who might find themselves in a position where they don't necessarily feel safe, we've now got street pastors, we've got additional youth provision, we're working with Women's Street Watch in Newcastle to provide safe havens and make sure that people get taxis home. So there's an awful lot going on, as well as training for bar staff, training for door staff, so that they work directly with the police, don't they?
Absolutely. We couldn't police the nighttime economy alone, and nor should we want to. So it's really important that we work with local businesses, we work with licensed premises, we work with door staff, we work with takeaways, with taxi drivers, with hotels. It really is a collective and a partnership effort to make sure that the city is safe. It's absolutely crucial. We couldn't do it alone.
Brilliant. One question that we got from Julie in Biker, which I suppose is related to this safety at night, because what we all have to do is get to and from our night out, is about the metro and public transport. Kate and Forden asked about it as well. So can you talk to us a little bit about what's going on the metro and on the public transport network late at night as well, please?
Yeah, absolutely. And the transport network is something that we hear regularly from members of the public, that is something that causes concerns. We have really strong working relationships with Nexus and with all of the local transport providers. We have our own metro unit within the police that works specifically on the metro stations, providing that support and reassurance, not only on the trains but on the platforms and in the areas around the stations themselves. We've run several multi-agency operations, again targeting things like antisocial behaviour, violence, and safety in general, which have been really kind of successful. And we do seasonal activity, so in the summer periods when we know that people are going to travel to the coast, we have operations that are specific where we know there's going to be higher footfall on certain lines and in certain locations. So we've got a range of different methods that we use.
Yeah, and actually, alongside that, I know that Nexus and have really boosted their security presence, and we've put some youth services out onto the transport network to try and do that diversionary work as well, because we know that sometimes that can be intimidating. We've got a question from Laura from Long Benton, who says, short term we need more CCTV and increased police presence. We've talked about a little bit about that police presence. We can talk a bit about things like CCTV and lighting. But she says what we need is more education for men and boys. Do we agree?
Do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
Well, I mean, I agree with that. That's something that we're doing an awful lot of through our Safer Streets work, which is making sure that men and boys just understand the message, because I think it's fair to say 99% of people don't ever want to make anybody else feel uncomfortable. We're not talking our perpetrators here are not in the majority, they're very much in the minority, and so just those tips, I think, as to how you stop yourself from being an intimidating presence when you don't mean to, not walking too close to somebody, maybe he's crossing the other side of the road, maybe not making that comment that's inappropriate.
I think it's been really cognizant of your behaviour and the impact that it's going to have on other people, and just having that a little bit more self-awareness, I suppose. I think, I have a daughter myself, so it's something that's absolutely kind of crucial to me. I want her to be safe when she's out and about on the streets, and as males we all have to kind of self-regulate not only our own behaviour, but make sure that we do that with the people that we're with, be that friends, families, or people who are on nights out with.
Brilliant. We've had a question from Gary, who's come to us on the Facebook Live. And he's asked a really simple question, which is, can we have more police officers on our streets? Now, for me, this is something we're talking about an awful lot, and I'll say the thing that you can't, and then I'll come to you to sort of answer the question about what's going on with new police officers. We hear an awful lot about the government talking about 20,000 extra police officers. What we know in Northumbria is we lost over 1,100 cops since 2010, which is an awful lot. And we have had some new police officers come in. We've had about 615, but that's kind of it. We're 485 short, which doesn't take us back up to that number. So positive news, there's some coming in, but we're taking that message very clearly to the government that we need to see the rest of those cops. So now that I've kind of got that off my chest, can you tell us a little bit about that influx of new officers and what will be happening with them?
Yeah, and it has been fantastic. We've got a range of different officers, different experience, different ages, and they bring a vibrancy in the organisation and a fresh pair of eyes and ears and new ways of working. So it's really important that we harness that. They get really positive and effective training, but it's not just about officer numbers and bringing new officers in. For me, it's about how, as an area commander, the responsibility for Southern, it's about how I maximise the officers that I have at my disposal, and actually that's about coming up with new ways of working and really making sure that we have officers in the right place at the right time, ideally to prevent crime, because ultimately that's what we're here for. We want to keep people safe rather than taking a reactive response to it.
Yeah, I mean, I've been out with the police late at night in Sunderland actually, and I'll be doing the same again on Friday. I'm going out in Newcastle with the police. But one thing that really struck me is that to respond to kind of a night out in in Sunderland and across our region, and to make people feel safe, it really isn't just the police.
No, absolutely, and I suppose that was a bit I touched upon at the start. All of those different organisations, all of the, be it taxi drivers, be it hotels, takeaways, that you mentioned the street haven before, the street pastors. We're really fortunate that it is a collective effort, but what is important is that we do it in a coordinated way, and I think that's the importance of the joint briefings that we have, the information and intelligence sharing that we do, so that everybody is sighted on what the current issues are, what the current themes and trends are, and that we, like as I say, that we coordinate our resources in the best possible way.
Fantastic. We've got, and I think we need to constantly be thanking those partners for doing that with us, because one of the things that really struck me is you come out with the police at 8 o'clock at night in Sunderland or in Newcastle, and there's a briefing, and it's not just the police, it's the door staff, the bar staff, the council, the street pastors, all of those people are there. They know who's out, who shouldn't be out, who you're looking for, who you're worried about, and they know what people's movements are. It's all designed to make sure that it's a safe experience. Abby from Holywell's asked, confidence in reporting is something that's really important, and she wants reassurance that if she was to report something, or if people are to report something, they'll be taken seriously.
Yeah, absolutely. We can't resolve, or we can't deal with the things that we don't know about, so we would absolutely put that message out to say, if you are the victim of crime, if you're the victim of something that is causing you concern, we want you to report it, we want to know about it, and then we can make sure that we have a considered response, and we'll give you the support that you need. But please don't suffer in silence, please pick up the phone and tell us about it, and I can give you reassurance that absolutely you'll get a really positive response in relation to that.
That's great, thank you. And I think we would reinforce that we need people to report these crimes. We need to have an understanding of what that picture is, and also to best be able to provide support to a victim of crime, and to try and make make change so that people do feel safer. I'm going to go to a rural question. Well, it's not a rural question, but a question from Hexham now. So, taking us away from Newcastle and Sunderland, and the bigger nights out that you'd expect. And Lauren has asked, drug users on the streets make people feel uncomfortable. What can be done about this?
Yeah, again, I suppose there's different elements. There's an enforcement element. If the person is intimidated or is causing, committing any kind of criminal offences, then we would deal with that. But equally, I think we're all very keen to take that kind of partnership approach and try and understand what the causal issues are that's leading somebody to go down, to take that path within their lives, and to try and tackle it and provide that support that hopefully leads to longer term change, rather than trying to enforce our way out of it, which, as we know, doesn't lead to those long term successes. So some enforcement where necessary if the behaviour is causing concern, but absolutely it's about that intervention, understanding the reasons, and hopefully putting a support mechanism in place that will help them to change their behaviour. Yeah,
absolutely. Anya's asked what is being done to keep women safe in bars and pubs. So this is a specific question about women, and Anya might not have been here when we talked at the beginning about Operation Cloak. So if it's all right, we'll do a bit of a recap on that, and sort of talk a little bit about that bigger, safer streets programme. And so I think first of all, really importantly, we've already talked about educating men and boys. We have those programmes in place, they're operational now, which is really, really good. We have a programme which trains bar staff and door staff to recognise when somebody might be in trouble. I think that kind of old-fashioned view that somebody's just too drunk and needs to be kicked out, we need to see an end to that. We need to see somebody get help with with the issue that they might be having, whether that's help to find their friends or help to get home. And then I think that moves us on to some of the more enforcement focused or direct police prevention focus, which I think you talked about. So do you want to talk a little bit more about Operation Cloak?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, the overt or the high visibility policing that we do in the city centre speaks for itself. But what we felt we were lacking was that ability to really to intervene in an early stage and have probably a more discreet presence within the nighttime economy to identify those individuals who we think are posed a risk to be it females or other people within that nighttime economy. So the officers are in plain clothes, they will operate in areas that we know have caused where we've had offences previously, but they're not just there in relation to kind of potential perpetrators. They absolutely will intervene if we see somebody who is drunk and needs support and is potentially vulnerable or has the potential to become a victim of crime. It's about getting ahead of that and not waiting for it to happen and taking a reactive response. And equally, if we see, people in each other's company who cause concern, sometimes again we would intervene with that and have a conversation. And sometimes there's an absolutely valid reason, but it's a proactive and it's a positive conversation. Equally, we have had some instances within the nighttime economy of unlicensed taxi drivers, and again, those officers would be able to identify people who were potentially loitering or parking in areas and engaging with females potentially, or people who were vulnerable through alcohol, and again intervene and make sure that we're providing that safe environment and providing that early challenge to make sure we prevent offences from happening.
And we know this is successful, don't we?
Absolutely, it's been really successful. We've got lots of individual case studies and successes where we have genuinely intervened and prevented. Not only that though, it's been adopted by other forces, so it's what started in 2019 in Newcastle has now become something that's been rolled out nationally, and that's a real, I suppose that's evidence of the success that we've had as a result of that.
And I think, to sort of address the elephant in the room, I remember in the aftermath of the absolutely tragic death of Sarah Everard, there was some talk in the media about having undercover officers in the nighttime economy in bars and clubs, and there was concern that that might actually make people feel less safe. And I think, we have to tackle that head on and sort of let the results really speak for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I would say is that if anybody's approached by somebody in plain clothes, stating that they're a police officer, then absolutely ask for identification. So whilst they're in plain clothes, they will be able to identify themselves as a police officer and have that identification with them. And again, if you're still not sure and you're still not certain, then speak to other people who are in the locality to make sure that you're verified and that you keep yourself in a safe position.
Yeah. We've had a question live from Charlie actually about activity at night time, but not necessarily in bars and pubs, but more house parties and kind of noise control. Charlie's from Jesmond and is concerned about that transient noise that we get from parties and some of the behaviour around parties. Can you talk to us a bit about what the police are doing around that?
Yeah, again, we work really closely in areas like Jesmond, but right across both Sunderland and Newcastle and with Northumbria University. So we work closely with the university to identify where the students are based, if it's a student issue. With house parties in general, again, we want you to act responsibly, we want you to understand the impact that you have on neighbours and people who live within that locality. And if we feel that the behaviour is inappropriate, if it's antisocial, if there's issues to do with noise, then we have enforcement powers from a policing point of view, but equally the local authority has powers. And if we get to the point where we identify repeat addresses where we're having significant issues over a period of time, then the local authority have noise measuring equipment, and there's various different stages that we can implement and make sure that we address the issue. So again, I would encourage you to report it.
So Adrian is taking us back to public transport again and asking what are we doing to make public transport safer. This is one of the areas I think that we've had a real focus on actually, and one of the areas where when we've asked people, when we've gone out to do consultation on things like policing the crime plan, and when we've done events like this in the past, one of the areas that people sometimes tell us they don't necessarily feel safe is on public transport. And certainly, I've responded to that, and we've had a really big public transport campaign. We've now got our Safer Transport Northumbria app, which allows you to report incidents really discreetly on your phone without kind of having to make the move of picking your phone up and ringing 999 or 101, although actually if something is an emergency you must ring 999. We've worked with bus providers and with the metro provider to get security staff on there to increase the presence of detached youth workers so that we're doing some of that really direct diversionary work and raising awareness of reporting issues on public transport, as well as getting into schools and educating about what are the risks that people can pose. And again, that kind of overall understanding that sometimes your behaviour, though it might not be criminal, might make people uncomfortable. But do you want to talk to us, I know you mentioned the metro unit earlier on, but do you want to talk to us a little bit about how the police deal with public transport? Because it strikes me that it's by its very nature, it's a moving target, it's really difficult.
It is really challenging, and again we would go back to, we want you to report it. I was really fortunate to be involved in obviously the transport app that we introduced, which gave people a different way to report issues and concerns, not necessarily criminal behaviour, but suspicious behaviour or things that were making them feel uncomfortable, so that's really important. I think we work, like you say, with the providers to make sure that the staff that, you know, the bus drivers and the people who work with the Nexus and in and around the stations, again, become an extension of the police. They're our eyes and ears, we can report things. And we have made a plea to members of the public to assist with that. And if you see somebody who is in an uncomfortable position or who is feeling vulnerable, then we would encourage you to either report it or intervene if it's safe to do so. And that doesn't mean putting yourself at risk and taking direct action. I'll be really clear about that. But there are circumstances sometimes where, you know, sitting alongside somebody, if you feel safe to do so, might act as an intervention. But if in doubt, absolutely pick the phone up and use that police response.
Yeah, and there's always that message that if it's, you know, if it is urgent, if you are in urgent danger, you really must ring 999, and that is always the quickest way to get hold of help, whether that be the police or another emergency service. I'm going to take us again out of our main town centres now and up to city centres now and up to Northumberland and to Blythe, where we've had a question about you know, wanting to see more female security staff, more female enforcement, so more female police officers, and also a stronger action taken against perpetrators. So we can talk a little bit about what action might be taken against perpetrators, but what this really made me think of is the watch, which I think is something that everybody who works in bars and pubs probably right across our region will know about, but actually probably those of us going out and just enjoying the nighttime economy, the best in the country, I should add, we probably don't think about very much.
Yeah, and pub watch is something that we've had for a long time now. It's a multi-agency approach. It's about making sure that not only the establishments talk to each other, because as we know, some of our perpetrators and some of those concerned individuals move between premises, and it's really important that we have that information sharing between the individual kind of licensed premises themselves. It's something that we're actively involved in, and as part of pub watch, part of the reason or aims of it is to identify some of those either violent individuals who've been involved in committing offences on licensed premises, but equally people who've been involved in drug use. There's a range of different things that we bring into that pub watch arena, and then conversations about their suitability to be able to go into licensed premises. So there's a really strong message here that if you go into licensed premises, if your behaviour isn't appropriate, if you commit criminal offences, then there's every chance that you will be banned from not only the premises that you commit the offence in, but potentially much wider premises within a geographic kind of location. So we attend the meetings, or part of that, we do the information sharing, we identify kind of crime patterns, themes and trends with the licensees, and it's a really kind of collective and collaborative approach to make sure that when you're in a licensed premises right across the Northumbria area, that you know that you're safe and the people that are in the premises you know, are suitable and hopefully will behave in the way that we'd like.
Yeah, and Holly also, she did ask about tougher enforcement action against perpetrators, so those people who are caught causing problems in the nighttime economy. Can you tell us a little bit about what kind of enforcement action does take?
Absolutely.
Sometimes we don't hear about that. It's
no,
a big area.
Absolutely, and what we would always say is if we get the reports and we have the evidence, we'll make those arrests, and if people are committing criminal offences, then that's what we're here to do. What sometimes people don't hear about is the outcomes of that, and I think that's where we need to work really hard as an organisation to make sure that we keep our victims updated, but equally that we'll probably promote the outcomes of court in as wide a way as we can, to give that wider reassurance, not only to people who might be a victim of crime, but actually to send really positive messages out to the perpetrators, so they can understand that there are consequences to their behaviour and positive action will actually be taken.
Yeah, so something that I think is on a lot of our minds today, because we've had the Chancellor give an autumn statement, is cuts to policing, austerity, the fact that people perhaps are feeling the pinch when it comes to, you know, a really, really difficult cost of living crisis. And in those times, what often we worry about is rising crime. And I think particularly in this context, you know, people not necessarily being able to afford to go out in, you know, in Sunderland City Centre or Newcastle City Centre or at the coast or wherever it may be, but kind of driving that back into estates and into neighbourhoods. Can you tell me a little bit about how all of this work joins up? So not just in, you know, that visible presence that where, you know, we're naturally always going to see police officers, thankfully, in town and city centres, but kind of in our neighbourhoods.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right, the cost of living crisis, I think we're something that we're all kind of really cognizant of, and we're always trying to anticipate what impact that will have. So, for example, we're talking about potential rises in inquisitive crime. People are, you know, financially struggling at the current time. There is a risk around domestic abuse. I think that's something that we're really kind of switched on to as an organisation, and we're really keen to kind to work with families, to work with victims, and again to take that intervention approach. So really encourage that kind of active reporting in relation to that.
Yeah, so again, the message is report. I'm going to just say again, please do ask questions. We are live, and so if you get your question in the chat box or send a message, then we will hopefully be able to answer your question. We are trying to talk through, for anyone who's just joined us, basically what Northumbria Police, what I'm as Police and Crime Commissioner, what I'm doing to try and make sure that our nighttime economy is safe, that when you go for a night out in town or when you go to a party or whatever you're going to do over the coming weeks towards Christmas, over the World Cup, which we've talked about, you're able to do so safely because everybody does have the right to feel safe. And I think kind of that feeling of safety is something that comes up quite a lot. I think I'm very proud that this is one of the safest places in the country. We know that it's really safe to have a night out, we know it's really safe to move about our area, we know it's a really safe place to live. But sometimes people don't always feel safe, and of course it's natural for us in our jobs to want to say, it definitely is, everything will be all right. But can you talk to us about kind of what the police are able to do to help people feel safe and kind of that reassurance that police are able to provide?
And I think the message you give there is really important. Newcastle and Sunderland and the Northumbria Police area is absolutely one of the safest places in the country, and it's great, and we will tell people that. The challenge is people sometimes see the negative stories and that affects their kind of perception of crime, and equally if you've been a victim of crime, it is traumatic and it will have a long lasting effect on you. We can provide that reassurance in terms of stats and data, but this is about how people feel. So we're really keen, certainly from our officers when they're out and about and we're engaging with the public, they're the kind of key messages that we like to give out. We support that with the visibility. We want our officers to be approachable. We want people in the nighttime economy and they walk past a police officer to come and engage with us, to come and speak to us. We don't want to be seen as that yellow jacket there for enforcement. We're absolutely there to provide that reassurance, engagement, and make sure that people feel safe.
Excellent, and I think that's a really good message, isn't it? That the police are there to provide that support. It's not always just about enforcement, and actually increasingly what we're trying to move towards is that prevention of crime. Laura's asked a question actually off the back of what you were just saying before when we were talking about the cost of living, and I think sometimes we forget to clarify these very policey terms and acronyms and all the rest of it, but she's asked if you can clarify what acquisitive crime is.
Sorry, that is absolutely using police speak, so apologies about it. Yeah, by acquisitive crime, I suppose I mean kind of theft, dishonesty, where people are committing offences to gain money, items, materials. That's what we mean by acquisitive crime.
Yeah, and so sometimes we see that in the night time, when you're on nights out, but that includes things like shoplifting, burglary.
It does, and I suppose related back to what we were talking about before in terms of that cost of living, we know that people have got reduced financial incomes, financial hardship, increased kind of fuel bills, and there is a risk that people will turn to acquisitive crime, but those kind of theft-based offences, sometimes to fund living, and we appreciate we need to understand the context behind that. But yes, and sometimes it's wider offending behaviour that we need to tackle.
Absolutely. And actually I think one of the things that, and I suppose I digress slightly, but it's such an important point, one of the things that when I go out and speak to people and speak to particularly mums and dads and carers, they worry sometimes that their young people and their kids at times when it's really difficult can get enticed by crime, and so we're doing an awful lot to safeguard against that and to prevent some of that, whether it be violent crime, whether it be drugs, or whether it be other types of crime. So I don't know if we want to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, and I think that's a real stance that the force takes. So we'll talk a lot about early intervention, we'll talk a lot about prevention, we'll talk a lot about problem solving, and as I said at the very start, this is about understanding the root causes of why people offend in the first place, and trying to identify potential emerging patterns, trends or individuals at the earliest possible stage and provide them with that support and understand why they either are committing offences or are more likely to commit offences, and then hopefully use support referrals, youth organisations to try and intervene and to try and change not only behaviours but attitudes towards offending as well. But the earlier we can do that, the better.
Yeah, and what that really looks like in practice is everything from our education team, our violence reduction unit going into schools. I think that thread runs through all of this work about safety on nights out, about sexual harassment, violent crime, all of that, but also making sure that people have adequate access to the things that they need to stop them committing crimes. So, things like, access to food and to employment, access to services, access to good quality education, which is why you'll see me and the police actually talk about these things more and more, because those calls coming into your 999 and 101, they aren't just crime, are they?
No, absolutely. We're getting a range of calls about lots of different things. I would go back and say that youth diversion is really important. I know we've both been involved in kind of projects relating to that as well. This is about supporting our young people, identifying what they need and what the challenges that they face, and hopefully giving them productive ways to spend their time. With that then gives a positive interaction with different organisations, and then that gives us the opportunity to do that education piece that we talked about earlier.
Fantastic. I'm going to start to wrap us up there unless people have any final questions, but I think really what we should do is probably just do a kind of brief overview of what we've talked about our safety on nights out, the fact that this is a really, really safe place. We are known for a really good night out for all the best reasons. I'm sure we've all enjoyed that. There is absolutely tons going on to help support that night out, and some of that is really visible, so some of that is the yellow jackets, but please do go and speak to them, absolutely, and some of that is policing that you might not see, and a lot of it is down to the work that the police do with other people as well. And so I suppose the final closing message for me is that we want people to enjoy it, we want people to go out. You will get a smile and a friendly presence from Northumbria Police when you're on your night out. It isn't all about enforcement, but it's really important that people tell us about things or tell you about things where they don't feel safe, and that I suppose everybody acts responsibly when they're going about their Christmas celebrations or the World Cup supporting activities.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's about knowing boundaries, I suppose. Ultimately, we want people to come in, we want people to be excited, we want people to have fantastic nights out. All we ask is that you do it in a responsible way, that you're cognizant of the people who are around you and the impact that you might have on other people, and ultimately working with us and with the different organisations and the door staff and the police, and hopefully everybody can have a fantastic time, enjoy the night out, but that everybody goes home safely, and ultimately that's what we're all here to do.
That is what we're all here to do. So we will be doing more sessions like this, more opportunity for people to ask us questions. If you didn't get around to asking a question, or if you are coming to this and rewatching it, and it's not live for you, then please do continue to post questions in the chat, and we'll try and come to them and make sure that you get a response, or you can always contact my office or the police to do that. But keep your eyes and ears open for more about our kind of our campaigns on safety at night, and do share those so that other people are able to see it, because really this is about getting that message out there that everybody has the right to feel safe, everybody has the right to a good night out, whatever they're doing. And so thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.